What's up, Philadelphia? Welcome back to First Time, Long Time. I'm Colin Newby of 97.5 The Fanatic and 93.3 WMMR, coming to you weekly with Philly Sports Talk. And let's start today's show with a little inspirational clip.
There's growth under the soil. I put a picture of a flower up, right, and it's coming through the ground, and the roots are growing out, and the roots are continuing to grow out. And everybody wants to see results. Shoot, nobody wants to see results more than us, right? We want to see results too, but it's really important that the foundation is being built and that the roots are growing out. And the only way the roots grow out every single day and they grow stronger and they grow better is if we all water, we all fertilize, we all do our part, each individual coach, each individual player, everybody in the building, that we do our part to water to make sure that when it does pop out, it really pops out and it grows.
That's right. It's a Nick Sirianni episode. Published on 97.5thefanatic.com, I have Nick Sirianni, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the unknown. The Eagles have hit a pretty good winning streak here through Week 8. They've come out of the bye with 3 wins, the first at the Link against Cleveland, the next one on the road against the Giants, and then the last one against the Bengals, which was probably their most complete victory of the season. The offense is clicking. You got the running game going with Saquon Barkley. You had the offensive line on Sunday playing well with reserves. Even had Fred Johnson really shut down Trey Hendrickson, one of the better edge rushers in the NFL. Fred Johnson had a great game. That's a testament to the Jeff Stoutland system, Jeff Stoutland University. You look back at the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. He's really cut out the turnovers, and he's throwing the deep ball pretty well. He hit A.J. Brown on some big passes, and he threw one of the best balls I've seen in a long time from him to Devontae Smith for a long touchdown. So the passing game's back on track in that sense. You've had the running game on track almost all along because Barkley's been maybe their most consistent offensive player. But I have a question to pose that's really going to be the crux of today's episode. Why does Kellen Moore receive credit for offensive game plans when the offense runs successfully, while Nick Sirianni takes the blame for the offense's shortcomings after a bad game? Think about it. This happened after Atlanta. When Saquon Barkley drops a pass, it's Nick Sirianni's fault for him making the call. Down in New Orleans, when the offense missed a couple of fourth downs, that was Nick Sirianni's fault. Now you're hearing a lot of the Kellen Moore praise come out. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Let's trace this back a little bit. Jeffrey Lurie's decision to retain Sirianni entering this season kind of came with unavoidable consequences like this. The most passionate fan base in the NFL is watching the Eagles play every week at the Link. They're not offering the benefit of the doubt for really anything with Nick Sirianni. That's any questionable behavior whatsoever. The reports have come out with him from last year that he couldn't control himself after Big Dom wasn't allowed on the sidelines. There were all the stories about how he's developed a bad reputation among NFL officials. Any questionable behavior is not going to go over well with the fans. So when the Eagles win a pretty bad game against a bad Cleveland Browns team at home, and he starts yapping to the fans behind him, no, that wasn't going to go over well. But also trace back to another point. Think about the good with Nick Sirianni. This is the guy that has the best winning percentage in franchise history. There's a couple coaches, Pat Shurmur is one, and I think the 2 other guys coached before the Super Bowl era who have 1,000 winning percentage in like under 5 games. But realistically, Sirianni, for qualified head coaches, has the best win percentage in franchise history. So look back at 2022. That was his most successful season. 14-3, Super Bowl appearance, and they really were good enough to win that Super Bowl. It was a really tight game. They get outdueled by Patrick Mahomes, the best football player in the world, and the Kansas City Chiefs, the franchise that, unless something drastic happens, Seems like they're going to win the Super Bowl every year. But the root of the Eagles' success back in 2022 was a loaded roster. The Eagles have always been deep on the lines, and they went into that season with 2 good lines. But in the offseason, Howie Roseman had also added A.J. Brown, James Bradbury, picked up Hassan Reddick to shore up that line. Right before the season, he added Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And then you had Jalen Hurts, who took a huge leap as the quarterback. So was it Sirianni that was responsible for that team's success? Maybe not, but don't make the mistake of thinking that that means Sirianni sat around and did nothing that season. First of all, it's very hard to identify a coach's isolated impact on a team in really any circumstance. You think about these coaches winning Coach of the Year, is it because they don't have a lot of talent on their roster and their team still performs? A lot of times that is the case. So it's a very subjective question. How much credit do coaches deserve? But Nick Sirianni's impact on the offense in 2022 was pretty profound. Yes, he had handed play calling over to Shane Steichen at that point in time, but it doesn't mean that the offense wasn't by his design, that the plays weren't his creative thinking. So first of all, he did have that kind of impact, and he still does. We just don't really fully grasp what extent Kellen Moore is impacting the offense. But to simplify the conversation, I think that Nick Sirianni took a good approach in 2022, basically saying less is more. He let the talent on the field determine the outcome, which I think is a good thing for a coach. Plenty of coaches use ego to get in the way. There's system coaches like Chip Kelly. He did this all the time. He didn't let the talent on the field be the talent on the field. Sirianni took the less is more approach on the offense. He gave the play calling to Shane Steichen. It was unselfish of him to do that in 2021, by the way. But with wide receivers like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, with a tight end like Dallas Goedert, with one of the strongest offensive lines in the league, and Jalen Hurts playing at the highest peak of his NFL career, Sirianni didn't have to overcoach, so he didn't. He also gave so much to that team with intangibles. Think about the 5 core principles at a point where they actually meant something. Now, you heard about this when Sirianni got hired in 2021, the 5 core principles of connectivity, competition, accountability, intelligence, and fundamentals. And I skewed the wording there because I think that the wording is very annoying and not articulate or fluent, so I cleaned up the language a little bit. But those principles ultimately did mean a lot to the Eagles. Because when people say culture, it really means nothing on the surface. You talk about coaches instilling this culture, being the CEO, as a lot of people called Nick Sirianni heading into this season. What does that actually mean? I don't know. Coaches have to substantiate that concept by driving characteristics into their team, and that's exactly what Nick Sirianni did back in 2022. I think the easiest example to identify is situational football. Nick Sirianni has pounded this idea of situational football over the 4 seasons that he's been the head coach of the Eagles. But think back to the NFC Championship game. First drive, you come in against the 49ers. Very even matchup, supposed to be a very close game of the 2 best teams in the conference. 4th and 3, the Eagles decide to go for it. Jalen Hurts throws up a ball that is ruled a catch to Devontae Smith for 29 yards on 4th and 3. Now that's a huge swing. Either the Niners get the ball on the missed opportunity, or you get the 29-yard pass to Devontae Smith. Look at a quick replay. There is absolutely no way that Devontae Smith controlled that ball and took it to the ground as a catch. Did Kyle Shanahan challenge this play? No, he did not. Why? Nick Sirianni had his team prepared to get up on the ball and run another play before Kyle Shanahan could even react. Shanahan, this guy who's lauded on NFL broadcasts as this offensive genius, the great play caller, great designer, he just got outdueled by a coach who's focused more on culture and core principles and has actually given up a lot of his control of the offense, unselfishly, by the way. But why doesn't Nick Sirianni get credit for the Eagles' success then? You just saw situational football become a huge part of the NFC Championship game, a game that ultimately swung way into the Eagles' favor in a 31-7 victory. Sirianni took the Eagles to the Super Bowl, Super Bowl 57, in only his second season as an NFL head coach. The first season, he also went 9-8, which isn't great, but it exceeded expectations pretty drastically in a year where not many people expected the Eagles to make the playoffs. So why can't Eagles fans find it in their hearts to give Nick Sirianni any credit for the Eagles' success in their recent win streak and really for the entire 2024 season, starting off 5-2? We'll catch up on it after the break.
If it's happening in Philly sports, Colin Newby's talking about it. Go with him behind the scenes of legendary sports venues with the best athletes and the most iconic media personalities of the greatest sports city in the world.
What's up, Philadelphia? Welcome back to First Time, Long Time. And I want to talk about something that nobody really wants to acknowledge anymore. The 2023 Eagles. The massive collapse that team went through. They were 10-1 to start the season, coming off a Super Bowl appearance, won 10 of their first 11 games, hanging on to wins by the skin of their teeth. Jalen Hurts looks like this clutch quarterback. He outdueled Pat Mahomes on Monday Night Football. He outdueled Josh Allen at the Link. The 2023 season fell apart fast. Even in the beginning, you saw a lot of fundamental mistakes, a lot of repeated turnover issues that the Eagles had. They weren't the same team that was clicking on all cylinders like they were in 2022. But then when things went bad, they really went bad. The 49ers came into the Link and whipped the Eagles in early September, and that really started the downward spiral. And with that downward spiral, Nick Sirianni could do absolutely nothing to help the Eagles climb out of it. There was no connectivity whatsoever. Just look at that Seattle Seahawks game out on the West Coast on Monday Night Football. Jalen Hurts had a chance to bring the offense in range for a tying field goal. Instead, he chucks the ball up unscripted to A.J. Brown for an interception. Nick Sirianni tried to cover after that game and say that, I don't know, the play call was trying to draw a pass interference or, I don't know. He gave a weird excuse that was later revealed as he was just covering for his own players' mistakes. I think one of the biggest mistakes Nick Sirianni made last season, 2023, was how he handled the defensive coordinator. And remember, going into the season, one of those intangible strengths, those cultural things that I was talking about before the break, was coaching the coaches. So the Eagles go into that season with two new coordinators, and you got Brian Johnson and Sean Desai. Neither of them worked out. Brian Johnson ended up getting removed at the end of the season. But Sirianni pulled the plug on Sean Desai as the primary decision maker mid-season. They lost to the 49ers, then they lost to the Cowboys. After they were 10-3, Sirianni hands really all control to Matt Patricia, and that's a big reason why the team went wrong. He pressed the wrong button. Jason Kelce later did an off-season interview with Rob Maaddi saying that maybe if the Eagles had simplified the defense rather than putting in a new primary decision maker and pretty much a new system that late in the season, the defense wouldn't have gotten whipped as badly as they did in 6 of the final 7 games to throw the season in the tank. And if you look at the converse of that situation, the Eagles kind of simplified things on offense. Nick Sirianni was never some offensive innovator who was going to make the broadcast drool like Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan, who we talked about before the break too. But his offense really only lasted for so long until the lack of creative concepts caught up to them. And Jeremy Fowler of ESPN talked about this on 97.5 The Fanatic as a guest on the morning show with Kincaid and Salchunas. Going to read the quick quote from Jeremy Fowler here. He's citing conversations with NFL scouts who were talking about the Eagles' offense in 2023. He said, they kind of felt like the Eagles rolled the ball out last year, like, hey, what we do isn't broken. Let's not fix it. Let's go after it. And because of the talent they had, the Eagles thought that they could just mow people over. That worked for a little bit, but teams adjust and evolve. So on offense, when it came time to adjust and evolve, Nick Sirianni couldn't do it. He didn't know the right buttons to press. He didn't add any creative layers to the offense. The Eagles themselves admitted that the offense grew stale by the end of the season. That was the word used in the postseason press conferences. And that was a major shortcoming of the coach. So let's look beyond the X's and O's now for a minute. Even worse, what contributed to that collapse of the 2023 Eagles, why that team really plummeted so fast and so hard, I think Sirianni's volatile personality really contributed to that. There was the panic move removing Sean Desai. There was the arguing with officials. He couldn't handle himself on the sidelines. Ultimately, Sirianni was not calm, not poised, not confident during that losing streak, and I think it rubbed off on the team. Everybody was tight, and nobody really brought the team together and helped with much of anything to stop that losing streak. And that brings us to 2024. The Eagles made the decision to keep him, and they have to live with that. They knew that with every loss, there was going to be questioning, there was going to be calls by the fans to fire Sirianni, and they knew that adjustments with the offense, after the bye week, the credit was going to go to Kellen Moore. You've seen in the last 3 games, there's been a little more pre-snap motion. There's been more offensive plays under center. Most people are crediting that to Kellen Moore. But I'm going to play some audio to tell you why credit going to the offensive coordinator or the head coach isn't going to necessarily sink or swim with this Eagles season.
Nick moving to like a head coaching position, he removed himself from play calling duties last year with Shane Steichen. That ended up working out pretty damn good. Nick has shown in his tenure with the Eagles that he's going to do whatever he thinks is in the best interest of the Philadelphia Eagles. And he's going to make those decisions. And he doesn't care about how other people perceive it. He doesn't care about anything other than what's in the best interest of the team. And to me, I think players respect the hell out of coaches that operate on that level.
I did not interview Jason Kelsey, by the way. Every other show in the world seems to do that, but that sound is from New Heights. But Jason Kelsey is talking about a lot of the same things that I touched on at the top of the show. The lack of ego that Nick Sirianni showed both in 2021 with giving up the play calling duties to Shane Steichen and in 2022 with letting his stars be stars, taking the less is more approach, and doing what was best for that offense, that is a huge part of what helped those teams succeed. It doesn't mean he's just a puppet who goes along with the front office. It doesn't mean he's just a cheerleader. Managing the culture can be real. The CEO head coach idea can be real. If he's not the primary decision maker on offense, which we don't even actually know how much he's contributing versus how much Kellen Moore is contributing, But if he's not the primary decision maker on offense, he can do what Jason Kelsey was talking about and help the team win by whatever means necessary. At that point, people might still make fun of the flower speech. People might laugh about how Sirianni brings up his high school football team all the time and credits his brothers or whatever it is that he does. But the real issue here, and what Nick needs to keep himself concerned with, is one question. Are his strengths benefiting the Eagles in 2024 like they did in 22, or are his weaknesses holding the team back like they did in 23? That'll probably define the rest of his tenure in Philadelphia, and it's the most important question that'll help the Eagles the rest of the way in 2024. That's going to put a wrap on this week. I want you to check out the show Elements on my social media pages. Things have really picked up, and I'm so happy to see it. So until next time, Philadelphia, I'm Colin Newby, and this has been First Time, Long Time.